Well, a very good Wednesday early evening here in South Jersey, middle of the afternoon in sunny Southern California. It is the 12th of March, the year 2025. I am Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. This is Material Issues episode number 195, and it's going to be a good one. Joining me, as always, my very good friend and the president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival. He's out there in Southern California, Mr. David Bash, Beach Boys Hanna-Barbera shirt, bowler on, looking good. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling pretty good. Thank you, Mark. It's not sunny here, though.
Okay.
Definitely like last week. It's definitely rainy today.
South Jersey's gotten all the sun now, so we're 68 degrees and beautiful.
Oh, wow. All right, you're warmer than we are.
Yeah, indeed.
In fact, on Friday, get this, the high is supposed to be 49. I don't remember.
Wow.
I can't even remember a day when the high wasn't at least in the 50s. So this may be setting a record. I don't know. But it's going to be cold and rainy for the next few days. Then it's going to warm up a bit and get clear. But yeah, we have to go through that. Let's see what's going on. Well, as far as IPO goes, the Chicago schedule and the Liverpool schedule are now up at internationalpopoverthrow.com. All is going well in that regard. I will be soon contacting the LA artists we want to invite and get that taken care of. So yeah, everything's on schedule. Stockholm, because of the week we're in, it's moving a little bit slower than I'd like, but I think ultimately we'll be okay. We still have almost 3 months till we do it. Hey, good afternoon, Tim.
Good to see you, Tim.
It's cloudy where you are?
Yeah. It's cloudy. Or else Tim's cloudy. We can't always tell. He might be cloudy himself.
Right.
But, so your schedule now, what's up first? IPO?
Chicago is April 25th through May 3rd at Montrose Saloon once again. I want to thank Eric and everyone there for having us back. It'll be year number 4. And then, of course, year number 21 in Liverpool from May 25th through June 1, 8 days a week.
And that's the one I'm trying to figure out if my schedule will allow me, because as we talked before, you're going to have one of my favorite bands from many years ago, Twinklehead, is going to be playing IPO Liverpool. And that shocked me when you got them. And it's been a lot of years since that band. I even thought they were around, but we saw that new album came out by them, and that's awesome.
Yeah, so I have to thank you for that, because I doubt I would have come across them in my searches. So, I mean, Facebook's Bandcamp, Facebook, they're a little bit tricky with that. You do some really specific searches, but it doesn't gather up everybody. Yeah,
it still kind of chuffs me that I knew all these years about Twinklehead. You did not, and
no, I didn't.
It surprised me.
I think I did.
Great band. But
yeah, I certainly like what I've heard, both on a newer record and the older ones. So I'm really looking forward to having them.
Hendrik's been in touch, and he's excited about going to Liverpool. And
he told you. Oh, wow.
That's very cool. So, yeah, very cool.
Oh, nice. Let's see what else has happened. Well, I saw I mentioned last week that in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Bob Gerlin, my philosophy professor, along with his documentarian, Joe DeSalvo. I got to see Bronx Socrates on Friday in a really nice theater in Beverly Hills, and it's a really fine documentary. I think people will enjoy it. And they had finished the documentary right before COVID, and that derailed the project for quite a while. That's why it's taken a while. But Bob was in his late 80s. In the interviews there, and he was still sharp as a tack. So I imagine he will be even at age 91. So we'll see. So I'm really looking forward to them being guests on that program.
And speaking of documentaries, didn't I see the Power Pop movie is supposedly back to being kind of on?
Well, it's been. I'll tell you this much: Justin has finished a couple of sections. I've seen them both. He's just about finished with a third section, which will encompass the 80s. So, unlike before where it was just theoretical, it's real now. Now, I mean, he's going to have some obstacles. He still needs to get licensing.
Oh, that's crazy.
For a lot of the songs. And, we're talking about Raspberries and Badfinger and others that he wants to use. And, yeah, there may be some pitfalls there, and I'm hoping not. And even if there are, I'm hoping that, he'll just get it. Well, he won't get around them, but he'll maybe use different songs, find something he can use, and it'll be fine. I mean, having the classic songs in there would be nice, but I think it's less important to have them than it is to get the film out and, everyone can see the interviews and see the evolution of power pop.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So, yeah, I mean, granted, it's a tough project, and let's just hope that, sooner rather than later, it actually does get released. But yeah.
And I got to give a shout out to our friend Ken Sharp. I just received the updated Raspberries book, 890 something pages. It's amazing. And if you're a Raspberries fan, get in touch with Ken Sharp and get this. What he added 400 pages to the original book or something.
I don't have it yet. I missed the first batch, so he's getting another batch, and I'll be able to get it then. But
very cool.
You have it in front of you?
I have it to my left of me here. Here, you just talk one more second before we introduce our guest. I'll show the book. Hold on.
All right. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that book. I have the original, have had it for quite a while, but this one is like more than twice the size, and I can only imagine what's in there. Well, until I get the book, then I won't have to imagine. Let's see what's going on here. I'm just okay.
All right, here it is. We'll show this quick before we bring our guest on, but here it is. Look at this. Oh my gosh.
This is a hardcover. Yeah.
Hardcover.
God.
Overnight Sensation, The Story of the Raspberries. Ken Sharp. And when I tell you this thing weighs 10 pounds, it's 800 and...
I believe you.
It's just packed full of rare pictures and
all kinds of things. Yeah.
Tons of stuff.
We should have Ken on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing book if you're a Raspberries fan. Highly recommend it. And people have just been raving about it. But yeah, Ken, great job, Ken.
I've got a feeling. Before we introduce our guest, I just wanted to.
Hey, George.
Good evening, George. Nice to see you. I wanted to do a little watch check. This is a company. I think I've shown another one many years ago. They're called Akerfock. They're out of Stockholm. And as you'll see right now, it's not 710. This is a 24-hour watch. So it's actually 1510. Otherwise, yeah, AKA 310 in US time.
Right.
So yeah, obviously it takes it's a challenge reorienting, but you get used to it quick. It's pretty easy to read. You can see the hour hand at 15 down there. Yeah. Really nice, really nice watch. And by the way, I have a present to send you, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I will just say, do not buy any Akerfock watches.
Oh, nice. All right.
That's all I've got to say.
Thank you in advance. We'll look forward to that.
Look forward to that. All right. So now, yes, let's bring up our guest. Certainly one of the greatest gentlemen that I've known. Somebody who, despite the fact that he's had a top 10 hit on Billboard and none of us have, is just very down to earth and has been very, very accommodating when I've invited him to play IPO. Virtually every time I've invited him, he's done it. And he's either played it with his band, the Alternative Band, or the Malibooz, which was his early band with John Zambetti, and they're back together, have been for quite a while. There's so many, but he's not just a top 10 musician. He's got lots of facets to his life and career. And we're really, really happy to have him here. So without further ado, would you please give a huge material issues welcome to Mr. Walter Egan?
Well, hey,
And
Mr.
without
Magnet
further
and Steel, I
ado,
should say.
yes.
Mr. Magnet and
Yes.
Steel. Oh my goodness gracious! I got
Yeah,
something
well,
coming up later in the show. We're going to use that. It's going to be a little bit of fun.
Go for the cheap shot there.
Well, obviously, I mean, Magnet and Steel is by far your best known track. When you're playing live, it doesn't happen at IPO. At least I haven't seen it. But when you play live, sometimes in bigger shows where you might be part of a a '70s tour or whatever, does it annoy you when people yell out for you to do that song? Because I'm sure you don't do it first.
No, of course not. It's a curse and a blessing, but it is a blessing, of course, that people know this song that I made up and that they're standing out in the audience calling for it and stuff, and they're singing along. It's a great thing. The only gripe comes when they don't realize that there are 14 other albums and songs that if you like that one, I bet you'd like this one too. That's the the gripe of all of us.
Well, it's great that you have this attitude because I grew up in 1972. I'll never forget the record Garden Party by Rick Nelson, where he's lamenting the fact that he's trying to do his new stuff and they're all yelling for his hits.
Yeah, well, I appreciate Rick's point of view, of course, and but I'm a glass half full guy, I guess, because
your way is much healthier than Rick's way.
Well, anybody would give their left arm to have a top 10 hit once in your life, and some people have fantastic albums, never reach that plateau, and if you get one, I think you're beyond blessed, and that's rare. That's rare air, period.
Right, and of course we know, of course, that you had 4 albums on a big label, Columbia, and you had 1 on MCA. So if I'm not mistaken, you had 5 major label albums.
This is correct. You are correct, sir.
How many people can? A lot of people who had top 10 hits can't even say that. So
well, yeah, I've always didn't. I fought against. I don't want to be a one-hit wonder, all that stuff, and I don't believe I am, even though, if you want to believe your eyes, there's a page in the One Hit Wonders book with my face and story on it. So, I try to straddle the fence. I've never stopped writing. I've always tried to move ahead and not just kind of stay in that point of my apotheosis or whatever. Apotheosis.
Yeah.
Yes, my apotheosis. And, but of course, I love the fact that it brings money to me. So it's nice. And it's nice to connect with people who care about the song. I appreciate that Raspberry's book looks amazing. I have basically completed writing my book, which I'm calling Magnitude with a little different spelling of the word. Right. And it could easily be that weight. It's like 500 pages now.
Wow.
And I've been told, that's a lot,
Yeah,
and,
it is.
And the pictures, you want to put everything in there. Originally, I did it on this micro word or whatever the heck it is here, 365. And I could put links to the songs that I referred to because I'm still holding on to my iTunes. I put the old school here. I am just refuse to give it up because all the songs that I've written, I've put there. And that's how I carry my iPod around and go, hey, you want to hear a song? It's a wonderful tool.
It's interesting, Walter, because a lot of people, especially some of today's musicians, are really railing against the streaming services, particularly Spotify, because they pay virtually nothing. Yeah. But they don't like the fact that, people from this generation basically use the streaming services to hear musicians' music, and then they don't buy anything.
Yeah, well, that's it. They're renting the music instead of buying it.
And I get that, but I think those streaming services are very useful. For example, if I read about an artist or an album that looks interesting to me, I'll go on Spotify, and if I like it, I'm not just going to listen to it there. I'm going to buy it.
Well, yeah, that's because
that's how you
that
should
generation.
use these services.
Yeah, well, that's what I do on iTunes. I buy the albums that I want to hear, and
so I mean, they can be very useful. But I understand how musicians. I understand that they lament that, but still, I think it's valuable if you use it right.
It is, and I don't know. I guess it was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the Music Modernization Act was passed, and at that point, for whatever reason, the Sound Exchange, which is kind of the clearinghouse for all the new media, started sending nicer checks, and it's sustained pretty well through this. Magnet and Steel, for whatever, it's good or bad, but it's included in the world of yacht rock. And I always like to say I'm the barnacle on the yacht of rock, because I don't think the rest of my songs necessarily are as smooth is an easy word for what they call
right.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I guess, what happened? Your laptop went down, or
I lost all internet connection, and my electricity went bzzz.
God.
So right now I'm just on my cell phone to get back in here to say hi, but I'm working on everything else as it's slowly coming back up. But I'm here.
All right, good.
That was strange. Yeah, I didn't know if that was part of the format. That.
Yeah, we like to disappear every once in a while and come back in and
bathroom break.
Well, I have a very weak bladder, Walter. So
I can relate. I'll tell you.
I have to leave in the middle of the show to relieve myself. But another thing Magnet and Steel has obviously done for you is it's appeared in soundtracks, which I mean that's amazing. I mean, in a movie like Boogie Nights, which is a huge movie. I mean, that's something. How did that all happen? Did you guys shop it, or did you find out later?
The times that I've shopped it, I've always gotten the response, "Love this song, can't really use it," and then it just comes to us through, it being out there in the world and its place in that particular time. If you were alive in 1978, you probably heard that song, even though you probably didn't know it was me. Although back then you might have known it was me. But since then, that's the song that people know. It's like I meet people and I go, yeah, I had this song. And say,
I think of another artist who had a big hit in '78, Nick Gilder. Everyone knows Hot Child in the City, but do they know who did it? Not necessarily.
Yeah,
but they sure know the song.
And speaking of Nick Gilder, you just brought that up, but I was just thinking today, because I was walking the dog and I was listening to pretty much all of Walter's catalog. There's as you go through the ages of music, it just seems like every age has kind of a distinctive production sound to it. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to 1978, there's so many things have that same production quality. It's almost like everybody said, here's how we're going to do it right now. Uh-huh. And seriously, and that's not a cut on anything. It just, each time has its kind of thing. And I was listening to Magnet and Steel and Girlfriend and a couple of your tracks, and I was like, you know what? This reminds me of so many things. Oh, it reminds me of what Nick Gilder was doing at the time as far as the sound is concerned, just the production of it. And that's a very cool little thing.
That is a great. I mean, the production values of the late '70s are among my favorite. So I'm glad that it was pervasive in what was being played on the radio back then.
Yeah, well, of course, Lindsey Buckingham, I think, was a leader in very forceful production as far as the sound of that time. He and Stevie technically were the producers of my first album, Fundamental Role. And as I was, and the engineer Dwayne Scott also was. But then for the second album, the one with Magnet and Hot Summer Nights, that was Lindsey as the producer, Richard Dashut as engineer, co-producer, and then I'm always telling them what I think anyway. So I always got production credit because that's something I always thought about. I studied Brian Wilson records, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what John and I came together. John Zambetti and I came together over that kind of thing where, oh, you listen to that, oh yeah, you hear the bass part, oh, you really pay attention to how records are put together.
Yeah.
Now you grew up in Queens before you went to college. Did you meet John there? And is that where the Malibooz formed?
Okay, my grammar school was called Our Lady Queen of Martyrs, and that was in Forest Hills, New York. And we had a basketball team in 8th grade, and we were invited to play for the Loyola school tournament. They had a tournament, and the coach of the Loyola team would scout these grammar school kids and invite. Anyway, we got invited. I got invited to take the entrance exam because it's a Jesuit private school, and I probably wouldn't have gone there otherwise. But I came in third in the entrance exam. They gave a scholarship to the first two, and the guy who came in first didn't want to go there, so I wound up getting the scholarship and wound up going to Loyola. And it was great. It was like 200 kids in the school for 4 years of high school. So, they're very small classes, and you got to know everybody. And so in my Latin class, freshman year Latin class, I was sitting in front of this guy drawing a picture of a guitar and an amplifier in his notebook. And I was like, hey, what's going on? What's that? And that was John Zambetti. And so, he was already in a band called the Statics in high school there. And then he was about to start, in a year or so, he was about to start his own band. And he said, if I got an electric guitar, I could be in the band. So that was how I got my start in the music business. And the Malibooz was a great place to find out who you were. It's like,
didn't you? I thought I read this. Maybe I read it on your 1981 album, the Malibooz album. But did you guys play the World's Fair in 1964?
We did, yes. And
wow.
It probably was 65, but yeah, it was. We did. We played the RCA Pavilion, which was a closed circuit TV broadcast on the fairgrounds at the Go-Go with the Malibooz, and that was exciting. We were interviewed by a DJ from WNBC, and it was very big time. But we also played at the New York State Pavilion, and that was quite a thrill as well. As that big, Men in Black building that from the movie. Yeah. That was the New York State Pavilion. There were no monitors on the stage, and the stage was like 300 feet wide, it seemed like. So John was on one side and I was on the other side, and we were both doing an announcement for the song at the same time, not realizing the other guy. It was comedy of errors. But,
and to quote Sam Cooke, you were only 16.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a week after Satisfaction had come out, and we had learned it. We taped it off the radio and learned it and played it at that gig, and that got us a lot of credibility. And later on, there was a guy at that gig who turned out to be a guy named John Terrence, who played bass in my band here, well, and actually in New York as well. Who's become my bass player over the years. So, yeah, that was a legendary gig at the World's Fair.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I had read early on that you were noodling around the piano and figuring songs out, and your parents thought that was so good they wanted to get you a piano, and you were like, no, I want a guitar.
Yeah, that was the summer of '63 in a Nantucket cottage. I had to go on vacation with my parents, and I didn't want to hang out with them, and so they would go out. I would stay in the room in the little house or whatever it was, and there was an upright piano in the corner, and I'd sit there and just amuse myself trying to figure out the songs of mostly at that point I think it was West Side Story, and so Maria was one of the things I was working on, and so that demonstrated to them what a prodigy they had on their hands. And so
and you had said an early inspiration was the Shangri-Las and Leader of the Pack. And when I read that, I was early on in my late 60s, maybe early 70s, I got some 4-disc or 4-album compilation thing that was called Leaders of the Pack, and the opening song was Leaders of the Pack by the Shangri-Las. This vinyl was so thin that you could almost bend it in half. It was so cheap. But I wore...
Was that a
yeah, I think it was a K-Tel.
Oh, wow.
I wore that album out, and I just loved Leader of the Pack from the opening. So when I read that, I was like, man, I went through that. That's what turned me on early on as well, was listening to that track.
Well, what happened, I had the guitar for my birthday, my 15th birthday, which was 63. And I got a Kingston Trio songbook that had pictures of the chords that went along with the songs that I already knew. So I would sit there and try to finger the chords, and spent that summer doing that. And then when I got back to school, that's when John made the offer about the electric guitar. But soon after getting the guitar, once I started mastering the chords, it bored me to try and do scales or anything. So I would start writing my own songs. And by, basically a year after I got the guitar, I started. And the inspiration of Leader of the Pack was kind of a backhanded inspiration, because I was like, this is so silly. I could write a song like this. And in fact, I did. I wrote a song with the unfortunate title of The Teenage Morgue, which was performed totally tongue-in-cheek. And but it was a start. You have to start somewhere.
For sure.
And once you do that, and then I would go into school, and then John would go. I would play it for him, and then the next day he would come in, having written a song that night, and we would bounce off one another after school. And so it was a great kind of petri dish for growing this kind of combination of poetry, doggerel, I guess, and and what it seemed like the coolest thing going around, which was playing music, with the Beach Boys and the Beatles. And of course,
how long did it take you? Like if you really started kind of 63, 64 into the mid 60s, and of course, listening to the Beatles and the Stones, how long did it take you to go from writing fairly simple 3-chord songs with major chords, actually getting into minor chords and sevenths and being a little more complex with their writing?
You're probably going on almost 3 years of playing, I think. There was a moment, it's this second half of freshman year in college, when I wrote this song called 4 a.m., which was supposed to be when your rapid eye movement shows that you're dreaming, and it was something like that. But I remember this as, in my mind, being the first really good song that I had ever written. And so, but the trick of it is to just keep writing, and having someone who actually cares that you had written this song and you could play it for them, and they'll, whether they like it or not, will feed it back to you. And that's I think the essential bond that John and I have from the beginning. And that is kind of a Lennon and McCartney thing, even though we only co-wrote a couple of songs during that period, and really haven't since then, which, having come to Nashville, where it's like co-write city, and I had always written my own songs and just did them, and I did one of John's songs, Surfing and Driving, on my first album. And there was a good friend of mine who I also played with, named Earl Shackelford, who I did 5 of his songs, I think, over the period of those albums. Actually, one of them goes beyond my 5 vinyl albums. But yeah, it's a habit that I really haven't broken, even though this summer I've been revisiting songs that I kind of wrote and put aside. And I'm going wow, this is actually a good song. I should do something about that. So it's slowed down my brand new songwriting output. But I'm trying to mine. So I've got over 2,000 songs.
Wow.
I was going to say, how many songs have you written that are just sitting, have never been really recorded and just sitting in 2,000? That's not a bad number.
Well, yeah, but of course, there's a lot there that you would go, oh, okay. I mean, there was the summer of '69. I gave myself the assignment of writing a song every day of that.
Oh,
song,
wow.
and I did, and I don't think I remember any of the songs. At least I could go to my notebook, but as far as being memorable songs, but that led to better things later,
Now, when you say that, Walter, when you said you told yourself to write a song a day, was it still just kind of pleasure writing, or did you really, or did you treat it more as a business? This was going to be, because we had Gilbert O'Sullivan on the show, and he talked about his songwriting process, and he gets up to this day, every day, he goes into his office, which is where he writes songs, and he forces himself to write like 8 to 4. It's a job. Yeah. And he writes and he writes and he writes. And when the day's over, then he's done for the day. But he does it every day as like a job. So, I mean, in your case, were you really trying in that manner, or were you just saying?
It was the beginning of that kind of, discipline of realizing that this is something I want to do now. And what's the best way of making that happen? I had already written like that song I mentioned earlier that I thought was really good. And it was like, well, why is that one good? And anyway, and so, it was one of these summers where I had the time to do it, and I sat around, and it was like, it was a challenge, and it was not quite the discipline of sitting down every day and doing that. And that's, it's very remarkable that he's doing that. And, is he selling his songs? Because I don't think the part of the problem with writing a lot of songs is what do you do with them?
I think he sells a lot of them. I think he gets involved in a lot of jingles and usage of small bits and pieces here and there. But, he's still out and about touring everywhere. I've seen him every year for the last couple of years here in Philadelphia coming through, and of course he's playing all his hits, by the way. Still releasing albums.
Good one.
So I guess that he and I are not that different.
No.
Hopefully he's still got it. And
so I have a backlog of probably 3 albums that I have sort of ready to go, recorded in my home studio. That the guy in Red Steel has said, yeah, these are great. But when are we going to put them out? I don't know if we ever are. So,
Walter, so in the meantime in college, to paraphrase Elton John, if I were a sculptor, but then again, yes, because you were.
Well, okay, so I went to college thinking I was going to be a writer of some sort. And I planned on majoring in English or journalism. And I had gotten advanced placement credit for English. And when I got to Georgetown, they said, no, you didn't get advanced placement credit. You have to take freshman English. Oh. So I took freshman English, suffered through it. I was very alienated. After the first semester of freshman year, I wanted to transfer to Berkeley, where everything was cooler. And Berkeley in California.
Right.
Berkeley in Boston. And yet I couldn't do it because my grades were so low. So I, dug in and got through freshman year. And at the end of freshman year, they said, oh, by the way, you were supposed to have English credit, and we're giving it to you now. Oh, you don't have to take English anymore. So at that point, I thought, okay, well, if I want to be a writer, I can sort of take some English courses, but maybe I'll go into art. And the art department at Georgetown was very small at that point. It seemed like a great opportunity to express myself, and that's the thing. Once you start trying to be an artist of expressing, it comes out in all the different ways you can think of. I've tried to use them through the years. I've written music, I've written prose, I've written poetry, I've written screenplays. I've got like 3 screenplays that are just raring to go. Next time I get a producer, that's
you need to come out here for that, of course. But.
Well, of course, and I have to hang out with John more because John is currently in those milieu. That's in that milieu.
And you were art major at Georgetown.
I was, So I concentrated on metal sculpture. So that was sculpture was my major, fine arts, sculpture, metal sculpture. which I love. Kind of the visceral kind of jumping in there and getting all dirty and messy and.
Do you still do it for fun?
Welding it. Well, okay, so as I mentioned earlier, although maybe it was before we started the show, I do music to support my substitute teaching career. And so I have been a substitute teacher in Burbank, California, when I lived out there in the 90s. And then in New York, I did a little bit. And when I moved to Franklin, Tennessee, I started doing it again. And so I'm off on a tangent. Where did I start with?
No, we were just talking about
sculpting for fun.
If you're still sculpting and
Great. Thank you. I'm sorry. Senior moment. Anyway, so I was studying in an English class in 98 when I moved here, and it was career day, and the artist came into my room to lecture the kids the art career. And so at the end of it, I said, "Hey, I've got a degree. How can you help me with an art career?" And he said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I've got a commission to do a statue that I need someone who can weld." And so I was like, "Hey, there goes my career in subbing. Let's go back to art." So for the next 3 or 4 months, I basically constructed this sculpture that he had been commissioned of. It's 2 angels intertwined. It was like 7 feet tall.
Wow. And
with 10 feet wide with the wingspan. And yeah, he made the plans, and I did the welding, and it was really fun, and it was fun and kind of feeling like, okay, I did take this stuff in school.
So when you were doing substitute teaching, was it all in art classes, or did you cover anything?
No, a substitute is it's not really a teacher. It's like, crowd control. Control. Basically keeping everything under control. And yeah, no, I basically get paid to read, and I love to read. So I do high schools, and I've only been in this one high school for the last 15 years here in Franklin. So they know me. I've been there longer than most of the teachers, actually. And so the kids, I stay away from the freshman classes, and I let them find out about me from the older kids. And then,
and I got to ask, what are the older
are rubbed off? I'll come in their class. But yeah,
what do the older kids say?
And they go, "Mr. Egan, is that you?"
I was going to say, what do they say when they know that you are in the same air as somebody like a Taylor Swift who's been in top 10? I mean, you've been top 10. What do these kids nowadays look at you and go, what is this? What is going on?
Yeah, no, it's like, well, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. And it's, and I explained it's a good job because I can work when I want to. If I get a gig or a couple of gigs together, I can go away and come back, and it keeps me in touch with the younger generation and back. It's through the years it's been good because I live in a world where you don't know what your next royalty check is going to be, and is it going to be feast or famine, and so it's nice to know what you're making and be able to say, okay, I'm going to get a check on this day, sure. So it's always worked out pretty well for me that way.
And I got to say, I'm an idea guy, Walter. Here's I'm just going to throw this out there. You've got metal sculpting as a thing, a career, an art form. A little piece of metal with some magnets all over it. And it's called Magnet and Steel, and it's signed by you down at the bottom. And you can move the magnets around. It can be your own interactive piece of artwork from Walter Egan himself. Magnet and Steel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I love that idea. Well, I'll split the world rights with you when that comes to fruition.
You never know, right?
Well, yeah, you do never know. Okay, so the last time we did an IPO in Liverpool with you, David, was in 2019 when I was with the band. And at that point, this guy, Robert Coleridge, who is the man behind Red Steel Music, came up and saw us, and I brought a bunch of CDs that I knew. I had a feeling he would come, and I wanted to give him to. So I gave him, the recordings I had done over the last 10 years or so. because he put out the Lost album, the Mad Dog album, 24 years ago now, 25 years ago, 24 years. Anyway, and he also almost put out The Meaning of Live, which was a live recording of me. But then he disappeared for all those years. And then as COVID came in, he came back to life in my world. And then and I had given him those CDs at the IPO. And he said, well, what is this Pamela album? And it was a series of songs that I wrote about, okay, my daughter moved to LA, and before she did, she said, don't get this wrong, Dad, but I really love this book. And the book was I'm With the Band.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, yeah, oh, cool. You know, I think I met her somewhere along the line. Let's see. And I actually was Facebook friends with her that I didn't even realize. And so anyway, we wound up going and visiting with her. And so I wrote a bunch of songs about having a crush on her, which was, you know, and I was in the 15th year of my divorce at that point. And so I was, you know, okay, let's see. Anyway, so it's a song cycle of having a crush, falling, trying to woo somebody, thinking it's not going to work, and then actually it not working. And so
I'll tell you one thing, Walter. I love the cover of the paperback.
Oh,
well,
yeah, well, you know, and you know, I had never really noticed her before, and so given the situation, it was like, oh, looky, this is interesting. And so, yeah, and of course, the fact that it turned into an album after my wife and I had moved back in together made it even a typical story of being known about music that you're writing about a certain woman and then not being with that woman at the time.
Right.
And that happened with me writing Magnet and Steel about Stevie, and then trying to have a relationship with a woman who would never get over that. You know, you think you love her better. It's like, oh.
Yeah, okay. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
So working.
About it in my book. Yeah. About that in the book, and about why am I still doing anyway?
You know, speaking of having crushes, you know, I was when your first album came out, I was 18, going on 19, and naturally, like any other boy that age, I had a huge crush on Stevie Nicks. I mean, again, who didn't? Yeah. And I remember reading an interview with you might have been even after Not Shy came out. I'm not sure. And you were talking about the first album, and you said that album, and this is a direct quote if I remember, that album is drenched with Stevie Nicks, and naturally my crush mind went where it probably shouldn't.
Well, it's true. I mean, she's on, I think, 11 of the 12 songs that are in there, and you know, and it's hard to mistake her when she's on her song. There's a song on there called Tunnel of Love on my first album, which was my most salacious song. But Stevie did this. Well, it was the night that she did those background vocals, where her wailing banshee background vocal thing is the night that I went home and wrote Magnet and Steel. Wow. So, you know, it was a big moment for me in a lot of ways, I suppose. In fact, that I'm still talking about it 45 years later or whatever it is.
I guess the big question is, number one, how did you get connected with Lindsay and Stevie, and how did you get your deal with Columbia? Because that's huge.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And again, I refer you to my book, but no, I will give you. I'll give you the you know, encapsulated version of that. Okay, so I moved to California because of a guy named Chris Darrow, who had wanted to produce the band Sageworth, which was the band that the Malibooz turned into.
I guess we lost Mark again.
Well, that was.
We'll be back.
And Mark is in Jersey, and he's losing power.
Yeah, who knows why? It happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, continue.
Anyway, okay, so to move along with that story, Chris put together a little band in Claremont with me and some other guys, and we started doing demos at Sound City, and that was just the funky studio out in the valley. You know, that
I know it.
Yeah.
Joey Scat. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. It was a very homey place to be. And so through the years, we had been doing demos there. And we did on February, in the beginning of February in 1976, the Wheels or whatever, the Ghost Riders, whatever the hell we were calling ourselves at the time, we did a hoot night at the Troubadour where we get to do like 7 songs, and 6 of the songs I had written, but I only sang one of those songs. And I think actually the song I sung might have been Surfing and Driving, but I'm not sure. Anyway, A&R man that Chris Darrow had was in the audience. Okay, and flashback to just one sidebar there is that when I first moved to California, Chris said you could stay with me. I went and stayed with him just as United Artists. He was on UA in Britain, and they had pulled their tour support for an upcoming tour in the next 2 weeks. He was supposed to leave. And so he asked me if I wanted to be his band. So I became his accompanist for that tour. That was a show opening up for the Man Band, who were a great kind of Welsh Grateful Dead kind of band.
Yeah.
They were really cool. Anyway, and I met this guy, Andrew Lauder. And Andrew was his A&R guy. He was in LA that night that we did the Hoot Night at the Troubadour. And he enjoyed the show. He enjoyed me more than the band. And so he wound up, hey, Mark, you're back.
His mic is still off.
Yeah. Anyway, so
here we go.
The next couple of days, I was offered a record deal to do 3 singles, which meant 6 songs, which is, I guess, essentially what we had played that night. I guess he liked my songwriting. But then I said, well, who's going to sing it? Well, you're going to sing. So I was like, oh, okay, great. Okay, with that deal in hand, we searched around for producers. I was aiming high. I wanted, Brian Wilson or Todd Rundgren or something. And then our engineer, Dwayne Scott, from doing our demos out at Sound City, said, well, how about Buckingham Nicks? And I thought that was one person. I was like, well, who is that? Is that he's related to Don Nicks, the Southern rocker? No, you have to listen to this. And he gave me the Polydor album. And it was like, oh, yeah, this is really good. Because I had been in bands with females through the years. Annie McClune especially was in Sageworth.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, this is nice. I still wasn't sure whether Stevie was the guy or the girl for a few weeks.
That's true, because you could flip their names, and especially
in a magazine article, the names were under their pictures.
Right.
Right. Anyway, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we approached them, and they had been in Fleetwood Mac for a year or so, and they wanted to maintain their Buckingham Nicks brand outside of Fleetwood Mac at this point. And so they agreed. They liked the songs that they heard of mine. And so I went to see them in Santa Barbara in April of 76. And that was where I met Lindsay and Stevie, although they were fighting that day. And so Lindsay said, I think it's just going to be me producing the record, but I really like it. He's like, and then when Greg heard that, Greg, my manager, he was like, no, we're getting them both. And at that point, I had no idea just how powerful Stevie would be in my life. And so, and that was basically how it came about. And I got to meet them individually and, kind of talk about the music. Lindsay and I shared a lot of the same influences with Beach Boys and Kingston Trio and the middle name thing. And the fact that Stevie was born like a week after Annie McClune, who not only was the singer in Sageworth, but was my girlfriend for a year or so through those times. So it was all just kind of like, oh, this is it. This is right. And so once they had gotten in the project, we went back in the studio, recorded, I think, half an album's worth, about 6 songs. Yeah. And with that as the demo, we went to A&M and we went to Columbia. And David Krebs got involved as kind of a co-manager. at that point. He'd been managing Aerosmith, so he had a connection with Columbia, and I got offered a 6-album deal with Columbia, and so it went from 6 sides to 6 albums in about a month.
Wow.
That's so amazing. I mean, you think about now how difficult it is. I mean, there are obviously only a few major labels out there.
Yeah.
But you think of what it would take. And number one, I mean, if they don't think you're going to sell 2 million records, they're not even going to look at you. And secondly, I doubt they sign anybody new to 6-album deals anymore.
Really, exactly. It's crazy. It's such a different time. And, well, the world has turned quite a bit since 1977 or 76, which is when we got the deal.
Was
so,
that
it was very
pressure? Was there a lot of pressure to signing a 6-album deal as far as, man, now I got to come up with the goods,
Well, now that you put it like that, I should have felt that way. But I think for years now, I had been out of college since 1970. So this was 6-7 years going into the project. And that period of time, I had been building towards having an album out. With Sageworth, we got close, 3 or 4 times to making a deal. And I had been writing all this time and getting more involved in the craft. So I was so eager with the first album. It was like, well, can I do all these songs? Because I had what I thought were a lot of really good songs. And in fact, probably half the second album had also been written by the time I was doing the first album. So no, the pressure only came after things started really happening. That was like,
right.
This is, I'm in the what? I'm top 10? Come on. That's crazy. Well, and then it became, it's like you have nothing to lose until you have something that you care about, it's like, well, of course I want to. Hot Summer Nights should be out. Why isn't it out? And Columbia kept milking Magnet and Steel way past when I think if Hot Summer Nights come out just toward the end of the summer, because Magnet and Steel came out in March and it didn't peak until the end of summer. But I think, given the fact that Columbia basically ruined Moby Grape's career by releasing 5 singles at the same time,
right?
The fact that they wouldn't release Hot Summer Nights as Magnet was peaking, that I think it could have been managed better, and of course therein lies record politics, and and then of course because of the success. Well, do I stay with Buckingham Nicks or do I step out on my own? Because technically, I'm the one that signed Columbia. And Don Ellis, who had signed me to Columbia, came and heard the demos we had done in Stevie's house, actually, for the 3rd album. And he was like, this is great. This is just what you need to do now. Because it was an era of, punkish, new wave-ish, less slick. Because what you mentioned earlier about the sound of those records, it's exactly kind of what there was a kind of a backlash to, I think, around this time. When, all of a sudden the Sex Pistols and the Ramones are coming out with this really raw rock and roll.
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, wait a minute. That's what I always liked, And so we tried to make, walk a fine line with the Hi-Fi album, which was the 3rd album that we basically rented this house that Stevie was just moving out of in the Hollywood Hills and outfitted it with a 16-track Stevens machine. And we recorded it in the house. We used all the different rooms with the echo, and it was really fun. And it ultimately proved to be not a great idea, I guess, because when the record came out and neither Lindsay or Stevie was on it, they were like, and at this point, Don Ellis had moved to RCA. So the guy who took his place was named Jack Crago, and Jack came from the marketing department. And so Jack was like, hey, I don't hear Stevie Nicks, It's like, well, you didn't sign her, you signed me. And,
right. Yeah.
And so it turned into kind of a misunderstanding about that record, I think. And, and from there it was like, well, okay, well, then we had to negotiate about the fourth album. Who's going to produce it? We need to bring in a producer, all this stuff. And then we had Earl Mankey, who produced 2020 and the Beach Boys.
He's great, yeah.
Yeah, and he did my fourth album. But I'm not sure that we saw eye to eye during that period. But there's some cool songs on that. Baby Let's Run Away was the single from it. And the most memorable song was probably Tuesday Weld.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Speaking of crushes.
Oh, yeah, that crush, the crush that never gave up.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear from her?
Yeah, no, I never did.
Oh, wow.
I'm very disappointed by that. And in fact, every time I post it on her birthday or whatever, I keep thinking, well, this time she'll notice it, but you never say die, right? There's a book kind of in a magazine form about the pop culture of the years, or so, I forget the name, but there's a little thing about Tuesday Weld, and it has a sidebar about my song in it, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, there, and then so after that, it was 4 out of the 6, and it was like, well, wait, why are we wasting most of a year for like a month of Columbia's attention, and when they weren't promoting what they used to promote the way they promoted that. So yeah, that was when we got a year or so, and that was when the first Malibooz album was recorded. That was 81. And then we got out of that deal, and Danny Bramson, who used to work the Universal Amphitheater, was the head of Backstreet Records, which is Tom Petty's label, an independent label within MCA. And we signed the deal to do the next album with him. And he wanted to prove that he could make a record that wasn't Tom Petty Succeed. And I wanted to prove that I was more than just a teen crooner one-hit wonder. And so I had a song called Full Moon Fire, which there's a video out there of where I turn into a werewolf. And this predated Michael Jackson's Thriller by about 6 or 7 months. So I didn't get the inspiration from him, although it might have gone the other direction. That's
right.
Remains to be seen. But yeah, and that was climbing the charts, and Dino Barbas, the promo man, I got all the stations in my pocket, Walter. Yeah, right. And one of them must have fallen out or something because it lost its bullet. Lost its bullet the week that, Danny and Irving Azoff were trying to be president of MCA, and Irving won. Danny was out because it was not a very friendly battle that they fought, and I had to deal with standing there in very small office talking to Irving, saying Magnum Steel lost its bullet and it was a hit. We could make it a hit. The thing was, I had been Danny's pet project, and so baby with the bathwater time. And so that was the end of Full Moon Fire. When it was released, it was the hottest song ever, more so than any of Tom's songs on that label. At least that's what I was told by Danny Bramson. Anyway, so that was the story of my vinyl career.
I really like Tammy Ann from that album, by the way, Walter.
I got married that year, and then the rest of my life began. What did you say?
I said I really like Tammy Ann from that album.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's and Tammy Ann's in the other room here. She and I have found our way back together after all.
Oh, nice.
That's who. Okay,
yeah.
I got it.
So yeah, we were together for about 20 years. We got separated and then divorced in 2004, and then we cooperated through the years on our children, and then 2017 we moved back together.
Wow.
And we've been back together since then. So it's a country song in reverse or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So
between 81 and when you put out Walternative, what were you doing?
Well, 81 was the Malibooz. 83 was Wild Exhibitions, the Tom Petty album, which we promoted till about 85. And Tammy and I got married in 84, and Walt was born in 85. And through 85, through the end of the 80s, Tammy had the job that she went to, and I would stay home with Walt. I would play with my band at night. Then I would do just whatever weird jobs I could find. I was, oh God, I wrote the copy for the RCA in-house magazine. So hyping like the Thompson twins, and it was during that period. I worked as a book reviewer for the California Review of Books for about 3 years, where I'd get paid a penny a word for my reviews. That was kind of fun.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was nice to get paid to read, and there it is. And then I did my game show career. I was on a game show called Catchphrase, and I came that close to winning it all on Catchphrase. It was really fun to just be silly on those shows, and you got to be animated, and so it was Dennis James was the host, and so I did really well on that one. And then I was on Scrabble. Where I was on for like 3 days with Chuck Woolery and Charlie Tuna. And I did pretty well at that. And I tried out for the new Name That Tune when Dick Clark was reviving it. And unfortunately, when it came to bid a note, where it's like, I can name that tune in 5 notes or whatever.
Right.
I could always name it from the
clue.
The clue.
Yeah, I remember being able to do that occasionally.
Yeah, it was like, well, okay, Walter, but that kind of ruins the game if you want.
Well, we're going to test you in a little bit on some clues here with David. It'll be fun. But speaking of,
I'm sorry, I have to ask before we get off this topic. Scrabble was hosted, as you mentioned, by Chuck Woolery, and I read that he wanted you to sing the hook from Magnet and Steel. Were you aware that he had been in a band called the Avant Garde at that time? I mean, in the 60s?
Which band was he in?
In the late 60s, he had a band, well, it was really a duo more than anything, called the Avant Garde, and they had a minor hit called Naturally Stoned.
Oh, no.
They actually perform it on Hugh Hefner's Playboy After Dark. There's a video on YouTube. So I wondered if you were aware of it, and you would have said, "Come on, Chuck, I want to hear the hook
totally
Naturally Stoned." Yeah.
Oh no, that's great. Well, I did the Mike Douglas show, and I referred to his hit, "The Men in My Little Girl's Life," and that blew his mind because he was in like automatic mode.
Right.
I kept answering questions with these kind of weird, funny answers. And he would just be oblivious while the other panelists, were like, it was, God, what was the name? Anyway, yeah, so it was fun to be able to do that with Chuck. He had this wonderful gold watch that he kept flashing.
Charlie Tuna connection too.
Yeah, Charlie Tuna gave him my bona fides. It was like, oh yeah, man, that was a big song. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so no, I wish I had known that he was in the Avant Garde.
Yeah, check it out. Look up Avant Garde Naturally Stoned on YouTube. You'll probably get the Hugh Hefner video.
Yeah.
Chuck is like doing this the whole time when he's trying to be cool. And he's singing with his partner, and he's snapping his fingers. He's really dressed well. I'll say that much. He has a double-breasted jacket, and he's looking good.
And how was your experience, Walter, on American Bandstand? How was your experience on Bandstand with Dick Clark?
That was great. I mean, I really felt like I knew Dick anyway because I had watched him so much through the years, and I told him that. And the fact that he was the promoter of Chuck Willis, who was known as the King of the Stroll.
Yeah.
And so when I got on there with Magnet, I think I did his show 3 times. But when I was on there with Magnet, he was like, that's a stroll, dude. And it's like, of course, man, Chuck, so we hit it off with that. And yeah, Dick was okay. He was as real as it came with those people,
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people say that about him, so that's good.
Merv Griffin was a little bit aloof. It was funny because Merv Griffin was like really friendly backstage, and then not so much on stage. I thought he would ask me to come over, and he didn't. And it was one of these things. And Mike Douglas was just the opposite. He was like in another world backstage, and then when you got on stage, he was, oh, hey, I hear you have this house where all the people come and hang out, and there's no TV. It was like, well, some of that's true. I guess, I didn't have a TV. Oh, that sounds great. It's like, yeah, well.
It's interesting because you got to live it and see these people live. Like in our minds, we can only imagine what they must have been like. But to hear you say that they were this way and then that way, it's really interesting.
Well, Mike Douglas had to be cool. Let's face it. I mean, having John and Yoko on, and Sly Stone and Muhammad Ali and people like that, he had to be cool. Merv was not having as many cool people like that on his show.
No, he definitely wasn't. When I was on Mike Douglas, it was Rip Taylor was on it, and Brett Summers.
Oh my God!
And then there was a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon who told me I had a perfect nose.
Oh, no.
It was like, oh.
Well, it's still looking good.
Well, thanks. I try to maintain. Maintenance is hard at this age, but we try.
Well, I just to rewind real briefly, Magnet and Steel hit number 8 where it peaked on Billboard. I have August 26th of 1978. That's right when I was heading into my junior year of high school. So with dances.
You were the target.
I was the target, and that's why it stuck with me all these years, because that was, that's girls in high school and everything. But number 8 it peaked at. Do you remember the 7 songs that were in front of you that kept you from going any higher on that date of number 8?
Oh God, I bet one of them was Boogie Oogie Oogie.
Boogie Oogie Oogie by A Taste of Honey was at the number 4 position. Okay, yes.
And I bet Baker Street was probably in there.
No, Baker Street wasn't ahead of you at that time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then Nick Gilder, Hot Child.
No.
We referred to earlier. No.
I think that was later in the year.
Yeah.
So who was there then?
Number 1 was Grease by Frankie Valli.
Oh, Frankie.
It's a tough one.
Number 2 was 3 Times a Lady by the Commodores, also another slow dancing. Miss You by the Rolling Stones came in at number 3. Not bad company.
That's a good one, yeah. That's a good
Boogie Oogie Oogie we talked about. Hot Blooded by Foreigner was number 5.
Oh, of course. I toured with them.
Oh, there you go.
So wow. Yeah.
Wow.
They were very stingy with the stage. They would put tape around and say, you can't go past this.
You can't go past here.
Yeah.
Love Will Find a Way, Pablo Cruz.
Okay, there you go.
Another
and
great
I've been doing stuff with Dave Jenkins.
Oh, wow.
And his wife, Jamie Kyle, recently here. And that's,
and then lastly, Hopelessly Devoted to You by Olivia Newton-John was right in front of you at number 7.
We got 2 songs from the movie in the top 10.
Wow. Yeah. So, but those movies, okay, you asked me about the Boogie Nights, how that happened. So the first movie that Magnet and Steel appeared in, I didn't sing it. It was called The Night We Never Met, a Matthew Broderick movie from like 1993.
Oh.
And then in 99, I guess it was, or New Line Cinema had this movie that actually had Magnet and Steel written into the script. It was called Overnight Delivery. And it starred Paul Rudd, Reese Witherspoon, and Charlize Theron.
Wow!
Nice.
Yeah. It was the very first scene. Charlize and Paul Rudd are high school sweethearts reuniting after going to college and coming home for Christmas break. She gives him this magnetic heart, and they kiss, and she has one and he has one, and it comes together underneath their chins. Very cute scene. while my song is playing, they put a cassette in the thing.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the first and the only time they played the original version. Then they re-recorded it with Matthew Sweet singing it. And I think Lindsay was involved in the production of it. And Wendy Waldman, I think, was singing background. Anyway, so the two other versions in that movie were them and not me. So they saved their money with that. Meanwhile, in the negotiation for that, they came back. This was New Line Cinema. And they said, well, we have this new R-rated Burt Reynolds movie. It's supposed to be his comeback, but I don't know if you want to be associated with it. But yeah, I said, well, sure, why not? What the heck?
Yeah.
And so, of course, Boogie Nights turned out to be the big deal. Overnight Delivery went straight to video, and
I'm gonna have to watch it now because you've got three people who went on to have amazing careers.
I know. I've been in a few Paul Rudd movies. Apparently, it was This Is 40. It was also one that had Magnet in it.
Yeah, that's right. I love that movie.
And then I got a call from a music coordinator for Adam Sandler, who got in touch with me 3 days before the music was going to close for Deuce Bigalow. And
that's right. Yeah.
And we really wanted that song, and it's like, yeah, great. So I think it became basically the love theme from Deuce Bigalow, because that's where he falls in love with the woman with the wooden leg.
Yeah.
So,
do you think, with the way movies are now, do you think there would be a place for Magnet and Steel in a new movie? Or even it could be a movie that takes place in the late 70s or whatever, but you think
well,
there's
of course.
a place?
I mean, there's always room for Jello. But I keep wanting Hot Summer Nights to be more promoted. It's the most covered song that I've ever written.
Yeah.
When my version didn't quite do what it was supposed to do, the following spring, Richard Perry started a label called Planet and had a band called Night, which was kind of a Fleetwood Mac knockoff, and they did Hot Summer Nights. And
they did it well.
And became like a top 20 song for them.
Yeah.
And then it became, there was a French version, Vandelevla by Deep Rivers. There was a Swedish or Norwegian version by a woman, Anne Greta. Wow. And there was a German version by a group called Wooden Nickel that I've been searching for. I haven't been able to find it. I had a record. My record collection got melted a few years back. Oh. That's another story. But and then there was a Japanese version by a group called Bluesy, another one that I can't quite track down. But and then the cherry on top happened in 2009 when none other than everybody's favorite rapper, Eminem, and used it for, it was called the Interpolation, and it was basically the Night version because it was done in a different key than my version was. And it was the source of his song, We Made You, his comeback single. I had to approve it. They called me, and they were afraid to send me an MP3 for fear that it would get out to the world. This was 2009. So I got my cassette recorder up to the phone, and then they play it back for me. And I expected it to be a needle drop, quoting either the guitar riff or the ooh, ooh, ooh part.
Yeah, yeah.
It was neither. At first, I would think, "Oh, this isn't even my song. They got the wrong person here."
God.
But then as it went along, it was like, "Oh, obviously, that's what it is. It's the three chords."
Mm-hmm.
And I never would have known it, to tell you the truth. They were great to be upfront about it. I got 1/5 of that song, basically.
Wow.
And it took 5 people to write those lyrics, which I always wondered about, or 4 people, I guess, since I didn't write them. But yeah, no, it was that was great, and he went to number 1.
Yeah,
in the world for like a week in 2009. So yeah, that song is the one that I feel like
that's the nice part.
Underexploited, as they say.
Yeah.
Although there is a Swedish company that got in touch with me. Apparently, their algorithm flagged me as, someone needs to be exploited in the new media, and so they're offering to do some stuff but we'll see how that works out.
That's cool. Oh.
Yeah, and so I'm keeping busy with that and the radio show. I'm doing this Sunday night
Tell
radio
us
show.
about this. I'm going to run across the bottom. HippieRadio945.com.
That's how you can access Walt's Record Vault.
Walt's Record Vault.
Walt's Record Vault every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Central Time. It airs for the first, that's the primary airing. Although if you go to that same address, you can find the archive. And this will be the 44th show this Sunday.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm supposed to do a year's worth of shows, but I might go a little bit further. But
and what
it is? Yeah. Okay. So I was in college, 66 to 70. And to me, that's the hippie music era. And this station here in Nashville called Hippie Radio happens to play Magnet and Steel. And so I heard it one day and I sent him a message and he said, come in and do an interview, So I did an interview and I said, well, why do you call yourselves Hippie Radio? You play maybe 1 out of 10 songs that could be construed as a hippie song. Well, it's just a new way of saying an oldies station. It's like, oh, I get you. So yeah, they do 60s to 90s basically, So I said, well, why don't you let me fill in the hippie music? And so I do this Sunday night show. When I was in New York in the 90s, I used to listen to Don K. Reed's Doo-Wop Shop. Yeah, I love those Sunday night shows where you just kind of can go back. And so I basically wanted to do something between that and Dylan's Theme Time radio. And the only hard part is when I do the live one, there are commercials. But in the archives, there are no commercials. So if you get put off by commercials, wait for the archive and go straight to there. But yeah, and so, I commemorate the Monterey Pop Fest, the Human Being, the 1967, 1966, a lot of that, a lot of
time period,
Birds, a lot of San Francisco and San Francisco, LA, that whole nexus, Doors, and then country rock and then folk rock. And I even have a reggae show because I like that music and I love The Harder They Come. And then I'm doing a surf show in a couple of weeks. It's like, the guy's really cool about letting me just do whatever I want. And he wants personality radio. So I talk about having seen most of these acts myself. Right. I saw the Doors like 7 times, saw the Beatles 3 times. I saw Hendrix a bunch of times. And, so I have stories about all these things that I can spice up the show with. And so, yeah, it's been fun. It's been cool to do. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do it, but it's hard to stay up till 10 on Sunday.
But HippieRadio945.com, and I'll take you to Walter's Record Vault.
Walt's Record Vault.
Walt's Record Vault. All right. Walt's Record Vault, HippieRadio945.com. Sunday nights, 10 o'clock. Check it out.
My friends on the East Coast always knew me as Walt through my life until I became a recording artist. Then I added the ER.
Oh, that was your decision, not Columbia?
Well, I was like, okay, whatever. You give me a record deal, whatever you want.
Yeah, why not?
I could be that. Yeah. So,
I was thinking, you talk about recording 14 albums, which obviously encompass more than 40 years. And one thing I know, your albums don't sound like each other for sure, but it's like you've never compromised on your vision. There's always that, sort of that whiff of a 50s influence. It's always rock and roll, not grungy rock and roll, but certainly influenced by rock, always influenced by rock and roll, but with really good pop melodies. And all of your albums have that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, well, I think that's a good summation of a lot of the streams of influence that come into me for what I do. I've started doing these shows. Well, first of all, with Magnet being included in the canon of yacht rock, I have benefited by doing shows with Ambrosia and Player Peter Beckett and Looking Glass, which is Elliot Lurie, and John Ford Coley, who lives close by here. And we do Rock the Yacht shows. I always say that I'm the barnacle on the yacht of rock, because I feel like I'm not quite as smooth as the other guys are. But I also have been doing these acoustic, just me and my guitar opening act things for, well, I did 2 shows with Atlanta Rhythm Section and Firefall.
Yeah.
I would just open it with me and the singer-songwriter part of me talking about, well, basically stuff that we're talking about today, about how the songs came about and, all those kind of things. And so it's just me and the guitar in a little box that gives me subtle harmonies when I step on it. And it's fun. And so I'm looking forward to doing more of those shows. I'm playing another show with Ambrosia on May 31st at a casino in Palm Desert.
Wow.
Agua Caliente, I think it's called. And so
I'll be in Liverpool at that
the
time.
hot water.
Oh, well, maybe our paths will cross at some point here.
Oh, I know they will.
Oh, indeed. But Walt, if you would humor us for just a couple of minutes here. We occasionally, when we don't have a guest on the show, we'll do a segment we called Stump the Bash. Now, David is almost a savant when it comes to especially early 70s charts and music and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he's never been beaten by any guest we've had on here to play him mano a mano. Now, we're going to keep this one just really short, just have some fun. I've got 5 lengthy clues to 5 different songs from 1978, which is the year that you had your top 10 hit with Magnet and Steel. So I'm just going to read this clue, and between you and David, if anybody blurts out who this band and the song is first, gets the point on this. So if you listen closely, here's clue number 1. And Dave,
before you do that, is this like Jeopardy where we have to wait till the full clue?
No, if you know what it is, just blurt it out, and we're just
going to win, David. Don't worry about it.
I know David's very competitive when it comes to this, Walt.
Yeah.
78, I'm a little iffy on top 4.
I might not have been paying that much attention.
And I'm going to actually call this Magnet versus Steel, which is kind of funny because David would be the magnet because obviously, Walt, you're Steel,
So they say.
That's what they say. All right, here we go. This 1978 song written by Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin. Chin Chapman.
Glass.
1066. 10cc.
Art of Glass.
Released on Warner Curb Records, peaked at number 1 September 30th.
All over.
Kiss You All Over, Exile.
Oh, Exile.
David got it.
Show with them in a skating rink.
Oh, really? What a great song that is. The rock disco.
And they're like a country band.
Well, that was their only big pop hit. Then they had a number of hits.
And then Chapman wrote it, and they knew how to write the rock disco. Boy, did they ever.
Wow.
And 1 year after that was a hit, the singer of the song was dismissed from the band, and then he died at an early age in 1985. So how crazy is that?
Heart.
Yeah, broken heart. All right, let's go to the second song. This single, reaching number 1 on Billboard in May of 1978, was written in Scotland, but recorded in May of 1977 in the Virgin Islands aboard the boat Fair Carol, which had been fitted with a 24-track studio. The album that this track came from had the working title Water Wings.
Is this Air Supply or something? And
this was this band's 7th album, later retitled London Town.
Oh, with a little luck.
With a little luck, Wings, David.
Oh,
David.
jeez. Wow. I'm telling you, I'm terrible at this.
I needed the London Town, believe me.
I know you needed London Town. We're just having some
better in 1958 than 78.
You have beat me on that for sure.
John Borak, our friend and writer of Beatle books, Beatle aficionado. He wonders if you've ever heard their version, the Pop Dudes version of Magnet and Steel. That's true.
I have not.
John's going to have to send that to you.
Well,
it's a good version.
Yeah, it's a very good one. Yeah, John's a good friend of ours, but his band Pop Dudes did a cover of Magnet and Steel. We've read about
I've heard of them, yes.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, here we go. This song, written by this artist, peaked at number 4 on the U.S. Billboard charts. The lyrics of the song mention 2 of this artist's favorite football teams, Celtic and United.
Wow, in the United States this came out?
Celtic and United are part of the lyrics of this song.
I don't know.
We're going to hit the buzzer. That is You're in My Heart by Rod Stewart.
Oh, man.
In my heart, Celtic, United.
I like the chorus.
Yeah. We got you. All right, here we go. Number 4 of 5. This track peaked at number 2 on Billboard, had demeaning lyrics, but was intended to be a satire about prejudice broadly. The artist wrote that this song from the point of view from a biased narrator. He grew to dislike this hit song because its success, calling it a bad break, a novelty record like the Chipmunks.
This isn't Disco Duck, is it?
It's not Disco Duck, but good call.
That was the year before, I think.
It was a very demeaning lyric. Very demeaning lyric.
Novelty.
Not Brown Sugar, sure.
No.
I don't know. What label was
the buzzer? It was Short People by Randy Newman.
Oh, man.
1978. Short People. And he turned out to hate that song because, of course, everybody gave him a lot of crap for it. And it was a song about prejudice on home. All right, last one just for fun.
Okay.
A song by this American singer-songwriter peaked at number 12 on Billboard and was his biggest solo hit. Rolling Stone Record Guide called it riotous and maybe the most important statement on rock stardom anyone has ever made in the late 70s. The song was a statement about rock stardom.
Oh, wait. Is it one of the Eagles? Is it Glenn Frey or Don Henley?
Could be one of the Eagles.
No, I got it. Life's Been Good by Joe Walsh.
Good, Joe Walsh.
I'm telling you.
That's all right. David,
I wasn't paying attention as much in those days. I was turning.
Well, you were doing it.
Our song. We'd be in the car driving to gigs. We don't want to hear that. Turn it off. Rod Stewart.
I know.
You were, Walter, you were doing it. I was passive.
Like
listening.
I said, if it was 68 or 58, I'll take you on.
All right.
You will probably, 68, I know a little, but probably not as much as you.
Yeah. But that I think that was a throwdown right there, David. Future show. Walter Egan, David Bash, 1968.
And if I think I'm going to lose, I'm not too.
Yeah. Well, 68 is one I probably know the most of now because of the radio show.
Yep.
Learning things about this music that I didn't even know. Basically, I just want to play songs that I like, and then it's like, oh, really? That was that?
Speaking of songs that you like, Walter, I want to play, if it's okay, and we can take 5 more minutes of your time. I want to play what is without doubt my favorite song that you've ever written and done. It's not one of your solo tracks, but it's a Malibooz track, and thankfully, I'll never forget when you agreed to have it on International Pop Overthrow Volume 5, which is still. We've done 25 volumes of this now, and this is my favorite volume. Probably always will be. As much as I love all of them, this one really means a lot.
Was that
and this is
from one of the shows in Hollywood that when we did that IPO?
Sorry?
I remember doing the IPO. The first one I remember is upstairs, this rickety staircase in West Hollywood. I forget what the name of that club was. Yeah, was that wasn't your first show, was it?
No, it wasn't our first show. This was probably 2002, and I'm trying to remember which club that had it upstairs. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
But this is a beautiful, beautiful song, and it's called California Days, and here we go.
Oh, great. That's one of my favorite names.
take me there. Cars on rainy streets, sound just like the sunrise, blue skies behind the morning haze, thinking about you and California days. In California days. Cars on rainy streets, take me to the beach. Sunrise, blue skies behind the morning haze, thinking about you in California days. Cerulean blue and turquoise painted waves, thinking about you in California days.
I'll tell you, Walter, I can't think of one thing about that song I don't like. And the nuances, like, you know, in certain verses, you might have a little bass thing going that you didn't have in the earlier verse. And, you know, things like that, always, I notice them all the time. And boy, do I love that song so
That's
much.
great. I appreciate that
so
you
much.
appreciate that. I mean, working with the Malibooz in those days, it was great. It was Scott Monahan had a lot to do with the sound of that, and Janice Liebhart, and then John, of course, is the rudder of the ship. But yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a really fun record to do. That
Absolutely gorgeous.
Hopefully one day you'll incorporate that song into your sets. I mean, it's a long song, I know, but
it is.
It's so good.
Every now and then when we would do kind of surfish shows with the Malibooz. In fact, I remember once at the Malibu Inn, or whatever it was called at that point, Escobar, where we opened for Dick Dale, and we actually did perform California Days. But yeah, it's a rare performance that we get that song out. But I've always loved that song, and of course it has that melancholy of living in New York when I wrote it, and you know, wanting to remember all the great times that California made. Oh,
here's a
message. It says, David and Mark saw Walter Egan, a professional band, play a show at the Shamrock Theater in St. Paul Oh my gosh, August 10th, 1979, supporting the Hi-Fi tour. How fabulous is that?
Well done. Yeah, very cool, Don.
Thank you. Is that Don? Don
Don
Manderfield?
Manderfeld, yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, we played one of the high points of 78 that when Magnet and Steel was riding high in September of that year. I did a 2-week tour with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And Tom was still trying to break through the top 10 charts. He had the album credibility and I had the singles credibility, and we each wanted what the other had, I think, at that point. And we would alternate. I would open for him one night, he'd open for me the next night, and it was really a crazy moment,
Wow.
especially in retrospect, to
Sure.
think of how Tom became such an icon. And and I am somewhere in between the cracks here.
Believe me,
You did.
you've
Well,
achieved-
okay. So I came to Nashville and I started playing these writer nights,
Hmm.
and I would of course have to play Magnet, and it's just me and my guitar, of course. And then more than once, people came up to me at the end of the show and go, "God, I always loved that song. Who did that?" Yeah, okay. Did you not listen?
They
No.
can't recognize your voice because when you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard you do that song recently. You sound just like you did. So
Yeah, my voice has held up pretty well.
I've always loved that song. Who did that? That's classic.
Yeah, it's my grandmother always used to try to keep me on an even keel, and he was like, you're better than no one, and no one's better than you, and it's kind of like, the ups and downs. During the time, okay, I got a letter from a fan telling me about. I won't give you the whole long story, but basically, she was waking up to a clock radio, and she kept hearing my song and hit the snooze bar. We'd hear the song again. And then she realized that it was just a clock and not a radio, and that it was God was singing my song to her. And then she went on to tell me I had a mission here in the world. And I was like, okay. And then the next night I did a show live, and a lady came up and told me how she lost her virginity in the back of a car to that song. So, it all balances out after a while. It's like God is singing it one morning, and then.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, for me, as I told you, heading into my junior year of high school, that song was huge. There's a couple back in that time zone, and that song was huge in 78 for me. Girl of My Dreams, Bram Tchaikovsky in 79 was huge.
Okay.
There are certain songs that, that's what music is all about. It takes you back to a time and a place.
Did you lose your virginity to Magnet and Steel?
No, I lost my virginity to I Want to Be Sedated by the Ramones. I think.
That would definitely interrupt the flow.
That's great.
But I mean, what a classic. I mean, just what a classic song of a classic time, and it lives on today. It's a fairly. I mean, the what is it? A, B, and C sharp minor. It's fairly simple in context.
Very simple. It's a song in the key of E that never goes to the one.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's exactly what it is.
I didn't know that's what I was doing. I found out later on that's what I had done. But that's what the thing, as being untaught, and I learned how to write. I made the chords, but I don't know music theory, or I didn't. And so I would just kind of find what sounded good and go with that. And then, I'd find people who know what music is about. And go, oh, you did this and that. It's like, oh,
yeah.
How about that? But yeah, it's 3 chords that take you a long way in the
sure
world.
Does. And
I found that to be true.
I love it. Well, in advance of the shot, like I said, I'm walking my dogs. I was singing it out loud through all the neighborhoods. And just love this.
Well,
love the song.
That,
love your whole canon. Everything you've done has just been so good. And yeah. Wonderful.
I love Magnet and Steel too, but The Blonde and the Blue T-Bird is my favorite song from Not Shy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And you've seen the video, right?
Yep.
I have.
Yeah, that's where my fantasy world came true for as I get to make out with Stevie in the front seat of a car in Hollywood while
there you go.
While the cameras are rolling. I mean, You know, that's the boy from Queens appreciated that moment a lot.
Looks like Don still has his ticket stub from the show. It says $5. And hope you
Well,
made
you know,
some.
I think of David as kind of the Sid Bernstein of the 21st century here, because
Yes.
you're presenting such wonderful shows. You know, I got to meet Sid Bernstein. I went to the Beatles. I saw the Beatles at Shea Stadium, and at the time, the ticket I bought was $5.50. I was way up in the balcony, way up at the top of the stadium, but at the time that was still outrageous that would cost $5.50 for a show.
Oh yeah.
And so that was 65, I guess, the one that I went to. And so I got to meet Sid at a I think it was at the Rock Con I did in the Meadowlands in Japan, I guess that was, and told him how great it was that, you know, all of this. And then I said, but I got to tell you, you know, $5.50 to that concert. And so Sid was such a funny character, and he went, and then he pulled out his wallet. He was going to give me back the $5. It was so cool. It was such a great moment for me.
Yeah. Who knew that it would now cost 200 times that?
Yeah.
How crazy has the world gotten?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it insane?
Yes,
Yeah, so I just try to live in the music and the art and the books that I love. And
How long do you think you'll be recording?
till I die.
Good.
So for another 30 years. Good.
Oh yeah, at least 30s it should hold up.
And I've put together. You can't really see it. There's the prototype for the steel record album, and the
magnet
one would be the magnet, and it says magnet and steel, and you sign it across the bottom in gold Sharpie, and I just want to get this archived in case Walter steals my idea and starts sculpting tonight out of metal.
Well, there's got to be an entrepreneur out there somewhere who will back us on this thing. There's some weirdo that keeps posting a T-shirt ad on things that I put up on Facebook, and I have to always go back and, you know, block him. And it's crazy. But this is something I could get behind. I think
I like it.
great.
Don't we like it? I mean, it makes sense.
It
only makes sense.
Ties it all together. You know, it doesn't have to be really big. You know,
It can be small. I'm thinking just a desktop thing.
Mini disc.
Mini disc. Yeah. I love it.
Maybe, use recycled CDs. Might be a cheap
Recycled
way to do it,
CDs.
you know? Just
We got a whole thing going. I just wanted to document it there live on air and in the archives in case
Mark,
it
I think, as I say, I'm willing to endorse this if we can get it off the ground.
Walter, may I quote you that I'm the Sid Bernstein of the 21st century?
Yeah.
Oh, please, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Walter, it's been a wonderful. We've been on here for an hour and 45 minutes talking about everything, but what a great time! And thank you so much for.
Well, thank you. I'm
being a
great
part
to be able to join you
of
too.
Yeah,
And,
this would be great. And I hope you come up to New Jersey sometime in the near future, and I'll definitely be there to
get some pizza and go to. I was watching some ad for the sub shop that started in Point Pleasant.
I just lost the name of it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, I didn't want to plug them anymore, but
that's all right.
Jersey Mike's is the name.
Jersey Mike's, Jersey Mike's.
Yeah.
We got them out here.
I remember eating there very early on when it was the only one in the existence. So.
Or White Castle down Atlantic City, or
White Castle.
Yeah, it was all kinds of places. Yeah, we'll go on a food tour of New Jersey when you come up this way.
Oh yeah,
And
the Malibooz played the Saint a few years back, and I think it's time for the Booze to do another East Coast tour. Maybe.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
be great.
But
next time the Malibooz are playing the Canyon Club, I'll be there for sure.
Yeah, well, if John's schedule will loosen up, he's in the movie business now.
That's right.
So he's not as available as he used to be, but and I might be out there. You never know. I should have gotten in touch when I did those Atlanta Rhythm Section shows. One was in Thousand Oaks.
Very close.
Other was out there in Modesto, which was an interesting trip. But
No, next time you're in here for sure, let me know, please.
If you're even playing acoustically, if you're coming through, let me know. I'll get you in touch with Randy now, and then the Man Cave would be a great acoustic venue for you. You'd pack
Excellent.
the place.
Yeah, let's do
Wonderful.
it.
Yeah. Stay in touch. We'll stay in touch over that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great. Thank you guys for having me on your show.
Our pleasure, indeed.
Our absolute pleasure, and have a wonderful rest of the week here, and enjoy Franklin, Tennessee.
Yeah, spring is
awesome.
Springing up here in Franklin.
Spring is springing up.
70 today in Franklin.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Walter. This has been an absolute thrill and honor.
Indeed.
And,
Great to see you
Thank
again.
you, David.
We hope everybody checks out Walter. If you feel like dropping him a note, Facebook is Walter Lindsay Egan going across the bottom. And, of course, Sunday nights at 10 p.m. Central on hippieradio945.com. Walt's Record Vault. Walt and Vault rhyme on either end of the whole thing. And WalterEgan.com's got information about everything, too. So check it out, everybody. Walter, best of luck with everything in the future. And thank you so much for being on Material Issues.
All right. We'll keep doing the good stuff you guys are doing. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Good night,
Have a
Walter.
good night. Good night.
Have a good one.
Well, there you go.
Right, another wonderful episode of Material Issues in the books.
That was so much fun. That was a blast. I gotta save my my magnet and steel.
And Walter's definitely lived by the philosophy of his grandmother. You know, you're not better than anyone. They're not better than you. He's never. I mean, you know, when I first invited him to play IPO, I didn't really know him, and you know, he could have just blown me off. Yeah, he could have blown me off. Never even answered. But no, he was nice from the get-go.
Well, it's kind of interesting because very down to earth guy, even though he's rubbed shoulders with some of the biggest people. You know, he's been produced by Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, had Stevie all over his album, wrote Magnet and Steel about Stevie. He's played with the Flying Burrito Brothers. Graham Parker covered one of his songs.
Spirit also.
Spirit. He's played with Spirit. He's done so much, and he's had a top 10 hit, which that's rare air. That's like making it to the Major League Baseball. That's how rare it is. And yet he's just the nicest guy on the planet, and super, super great interview, and just amazing artist. Great stuff. Yeah, indeed. Good one, David. I love it.
I'm glad. So we've got a couple more guests coming up next week on the 19th, which happens to be my dad's 94th birthday.
Oh wow!
Remember when he was on? That was an interesting episode. Anyway, talk about people who had crushes. I'm sure there were teenage boys in the mid 80s who watched Charles in Charge, and yeah, that's for sure. Certainly better than being the Sid Harriman. Mark won't get that. But
no, I don't understand that.
Nah, he was a guy. I not to disparage him exactly. He was a good guy, but I used to bowl with him in leagues in the 80s and 90s, and we got reacquainted through Facebook. But he's a raging Trumper, and yeah. So anyway, enough of that.
Yeah.
But
who's coming up this week again?
So Charles in Charge, the second season and beyond. Charles Scott Baio was living with a family called the Powells, and they had two teenage daughters. One of them was named Jamie. She was played by Nicole Eggert, who was kind of a sex pot, at that point. Mm-hmm. Teenage boys were certainly lusting after her. And her younger sister, Sarah, was played by the woman who's going to give us 15 minutes, maybe more, but that's what she's scheduled for. And her name is Josie Davis. And she was a little bit, she was a bit more of the introvert, kind of, sort of more bookish. But you could tell that she was going to become a beauty, and indeed she did. And she's definitely done, she's done a lot since Charles in Charge, a lot of movies, playing all different sorts of characters. The one that, I really enjoy is Dirty Teacher, where she's a high school teacher. She sleeps with one of her students. He is 18, so there's no issue there. But she's also a little bit nuts, going back to when she was a child, and she's haunted by her mother's really negative words about her, and that keeps coming up. I don't want to say any more than that, but it's a good movie. I liked it. Anyway, she will be on. I haven't spoken with her yet, but her assistant assured us that she would give us 15 minutes on the 19th.
And
So-
what's cool, I did see some posts of hers recently online, and she posts a lot about animal rights too, which is very cool.
She's a big, especially dogs. She loves dogs. So you and she will have that in common.
Indeed.
And anyway, so we'll have her on. Maybe it'll be longer than 15. We'll see. But whatever, it's not. I don't think it'll be an hour. And so whatever after we interview her, we'll I'll talk about some new releases, some reissues. We'll play some tunes. So we'll have we'll have a good time doing that for
Indeed.
the rest of the show.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
It'd be cool.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. On the 26th, and I mentioned this before, we had Steve Katz on a few weeks ago, and it was I don't know if you want to call it serendipity or what it was, but
it still makes me chuckle.
It makes me laugh quite a bit too. We had him. I had connected with Steve Katz because I was looking for my philosophy professor from NYU, Dr. Robert Gerland. He's somebody I never could forget. His classes were amazing, so much fun, and I got to know him, through his office hours. We became very friendly. In 2001, when I went back to New York to do IPO for the first time, I looked him up. I found him, went over to his apartment. We hung out for a little more than an hour, but I'd lost touch after that and wondered, number one, I wondered, is he on Facebook? And number two, I knew he was around 90, so I thought, is he still with us? Well, Steve Katz posted about Robert Gerland, about a band that he was in with Robert called Even Dozen Jug Band. And there was a great video, which I think I've seen like 20 times, of a song that they did called Log Cabin Blues. And anyway, long story short, I befriended Steve on Facebook, told him all about Robert Gerland, and asked if he would be a guest on our show, which he was. And lo and behold, I found out in the interim that there was a documentary done on Robert Gerland called Bronx Socrates. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was going to become a philosophy professor of such great renown, maybe one of the most famous in the entire country. He worked until 2017, I should say. Anyway, so we showed the cover of the documentary to Steve, and he said, "That's not the guy I was in a band with." And I just freaked out because they had so many things in common. Both trumpet players, both from New York, both small guys with very little body fat. And I couldn't believe it. I was arguing with Steve, saying, "What do you mean? Maybe you don't recognize this picture." He said, "I'm telling you, it's not him."
There was David arguing with Steve Katz of Blood, Sweat, and Tears over who he said was in a band.
Arguing, but just so astonished, I couldn't believe it. And so anyway, it turned out it was not him. And but again, this all led me to contacting the documentarian who did Bronx Socrates about, as I'll say, my Bob. And so now they are going to be guests on Material Issues. Joseph DeSalvo, the documentarian, and Bob Gerland, 91-year-old Bob Gerland, who apparently is still sharp as a tack. They're both very, very excited about it. And I got to meet Joseph last Friday when he came out to LA to do a private showing of Bronx Socrates. One thing I did forget to ask him, but of course I will, is this going to come out in physical form? Is it just going to stream? But it should come out pretty soon. Cool. At any rate, that should be a lot of fun. And in the interim, I have spoken with, as he now refers to himself, the other Bob Gerland. And it turns out the two Bob Gerlands have corresponded because people would contact one of them thinking they were the other, and it happened to both of them. So that should be pretty interesting. I checked that professor named David Clayton Thomas, and he made me so very happy.
Good one, John. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also, we were talking about Steve Katz. We were talking with Steve Katz about that, to go from an album, with Al Cooper as a lead vocal. Although Steve did sing a couple of songs.
Yeah.
One that really was not a big hit at all. I mean, it did okay, but wasn't anything huge. And then Al Cooper leaves because they want to bring in David Clayton Thomas. And he said, I'll stay if I can sing lead. And the powers that be at Columbia said, no, we want David to sing lead. Obviously a very good move in terms of their success.
Sure.
Because the hits just, I mean, especially in 1969, 3 songs at number 2. Yeah. Okay, John, get it out of your
Driver's head spinning wheels. Yeah.
I'm really glad you weren't listening to the Steve Katz show, or we would have had all kinds of. Oh boy.
Well, that's going to be interesting, though. The documentarian and Bob too. Bob too.
The
other
my Bob is like
my Bob, your Bob.
Yeah.
Bob's Discount Furniture.
Apparently he doesn't remember me as a student, which makes perfect sense because I wasn't a remarkable student. I was all right, but they were obviously a lot better than me. And but he does remember reconnecting with me in 2001. So that's
very cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how sharp he still is, and it wouldn't surprise me if he hasn't lost anything.
Well, and like I said, next week's episode 196, Josie Davis, then episode 197 with Bob Gerlin and Joseph DeSalvo. And then episode 198, 199, they're going to be interesting. We don't have guest book for them yet.
Not yet. We're working on it.
But we might have a cool announcement coming up. So
we just might, yeah.
Stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned. Yeah.
And next week Josie Davis, and then probably enough time left over to talk about new releases, reissues, play some tunes. I've got a lot of really good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, we'll it's all whatever we do is always great. I mean, this is 195 episodes we're about to finish up here, and there have been bizarre episodes, and there have been episodes with no guests. There's been episodes where we spend 2 hours talking to it. I mean, but every single one of these 195 episodes has been a blast. I can't remember. I can't tell you, even the weird ones. We've had some weird ones.
Even the weird one.
They were a lot of fun.
There was only one that wasn't a blast, and it's not Dwight Twilley, because that brings back great memories. The only one that I'm kind of bummed about the way it transpired was the Denny Sewell one. Yeah,
that's the only one that was a little.
He couldn't get his device to
uncomfortable,
and he was getting very, very frustrated. And I think he's still kind of pissed off at us because he couldn't. He kind of blames us, I think, for not having an efficient enough program to allow it to work for him. But since everybody else, even Lynn Carey, who couldn't keep her face in the frame.
Lynn Carey?
She didn't lose the connection. And the interview with her was good. She couldn't unfortunately she couldn't center her face in the iPhone.
But you know what? All this has been a learning experience. We've had a blast learning. We've gone 1 minute before airtime without anything being able to work, and still pulled it off. And
the first few episodes, I was having problems.
Yeah.
You and I would talk 30 minutes before everything seemed fine, and then as we were getting closer to the beginning of the show, good.
Yeah.
As we were getting closer to the beginning of the show, I would suddenly lose connection.
Everything would go south.
It was the weirdest freaking thing. Yeah. For some reason, it reminded me.
You thought Goldberg was outside your house trying to pull the plug. Grossberg.
I don't know. I thought somehow he hired. I don't know. I was really paranoid that he'd already messed me up with my Wikipedia page, which I still haven't gotten back. And so I figured, maybe he'll hire someone to mess up the. anyway, finally I was able to get things to work, and it's worked ever since.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I was thinking about that today when you lost your connection.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking to Walter by myself, which I think that's one of the first times I've ever spoken with a guest by myself until you got back on.
Right. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Because
one other time you had to leave the room because of Ches or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
that was that was kind of bizarre. But I actually rewatched most of episode 1 a couple of days ago because we're coming up to our 200th, and I wanted to, in many ways, it's not all that different from our shows without guests now. In fact, I even played back then. I played some current releases of 2022, including something called Incognito by some band called the Armories, I think.
I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah.
I didn't remember it at all. So
Ammo Ayers. I think it's pronounced Ammo Ayers.
Ammo Ayers? Yeah, maybe.
Ammo Ayers.
I wasn't really sure. All right, John, we want to say something.
We're waiting.
We're waiting.
Amores. They're called. That's it. It's the Amores. Like that's Amore, right? Like the Dean Martin song, or right, the More. They're called the Amores. Yeah.
Or was it Amore?
Amore. No, that's Volare.
I know. Actually, I really know because Volare was number 1 on the day I was born.
There you go. There you go.
1958. So there you go.
Yeah, hey, John, don't forget to send Walter your version of Magnet and Steel.
Yeah, I'll give you his email address and you can send it to him.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, he'd love to hear it. Yeah.
At least I think. Actually, God, maybe I don't have it.
Well, if not, as he said on Facebook, he's under Walter. Put it at the bottom right there. Walter Lindsay Egan is his actual Facebook.
Oh, I think on Facebook it's a Y, not an I, not a Y.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Find him on Facebook. Drop him a message.
I'm sure he'll accept your friend request. He's very good about that. And again, just such a nice guy. And not everyone who's had top 10 hits is that way.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we've had some really nice ones. You know, we've had some.
We have. I mean, and I'll never forget that you got the 2 members from the association. I mean, that is in my opinion, that's the best get you ever had. And
oh yeah,
certainly in the top 10 of gets that both of us ever had. I mean, wow, it was. I mean, I just felt so honored talking to those guys, especially Jim Yester, whose voice I think is gorgeous.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, materialissues.com, that's where you got to go and tell all your friends. Subscribe.
You go there, look at the archive. I mean, if you put material issues, if you go to materialissues.com and you put in Jim Yester in the search engine, you'll get. I don't remember which episode. Only episode I remember is 95.
Yeah, the actual number.
That's the only one of the older episodes that I remember for obvious reasons.
But we've had so many great guests, and if you haven't subscribed or ring that bell or whatever they say, do it. Forward it on to people. Let people know, because we're going to have some great guests coming up. We might be doing some things a little bit differently. Announcements coming up shortly. But we plan on keep going, and
indeed we do.
And having some great guests and having a lot of fun. So we appreciate people that hang out with us. We appreciate those that do watch it in the archives, because we've got some shows that are up there in the views by individual views, up into the thousands. And
if I do say so myself, they're pretty damn good.
I think
just because of me and Mark, but because of the guests.
Indeed.
Well, the ones without guests are still pretty damn good.
They're all fun.
Yeah.
They're all fun. Yeah. But that was a great episode, David. I'm going to go let the pups out now. And
is that a euphemism for something?
That's just like you going to let the pool guy in.
You're damn right, Tim.
Tim, good call. Yeah. I'm going to let the pups out. It's just like letting the pool guy in.
Yeah, right.
Well, love Tarina. Have a great evening. And, we'll catch you and everybody next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, really late over in European time for Josie Davis and more material issues and great music. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a great night and weekend and week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Cheers.